Okay. Salam alaikum. I think we are now live on YouTube. Just want to make sure. Okay, inshallah, let's get started. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa habibina maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathiran kathiran kathira. Alhamdulillah, it's great to be back. I think this is going to be the last segment of Tales of the Sahaba from my end, and then Brother Haris will complete it on Thursday, inshallah. Today we'll be discussing Sayyidina Bilal, radiallahu anhu, the confidant, the right-hand person, the muadhin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think most of us know it, on a somewhat of a superficial level of some of the episodes of Sayyidina Bilal, but we're going to go really deep into his life and what he had to endure, and then what he became through um, through his coming into Islam. So, Sayyidina Bilal, his mother was actually a princess from Abyssinia. She was a princess of Abyssinia. His father was Arab. He was a black Arab, but they would always, in the Meccan society, they would try to isolate Sayyidina Bilal by calling him Ibn Sauda, meaning the son of a black woman. So number one, they would say this type of a derogatory term to him to isolate him, to say that you're not from us, you're not from the Arabs. And number two, to ridicule his dark skin color. So he's described as somebody that was extremely dark in his skin tone. His eyes were a hazel color. He had very deep eyes, and so they were the type of eyes that would catch your attention. And he was known to be very handsome, very beautiful in his attributes and in his looks. And physically, Sayyidina Bilal was very, very strong, and he was very intelligent. Um, and so the narrations tell us that his mother was actually captured in Amul Fil, the year of the elephant, when Abraha came to attack the Kaaba, and it was being protected by the Meccans, and she was sold into slavery at that time. This was 10 years prior. That's the year that the Prophet ﷺ was born, in the year 570. 10 years later, Sayyidina Bilal would be born. So he was born into slavery. And he was the slave of one of the enemies of Islam, who would also die as an enemy of Islam on the day of Badr, Umayyah bin Khalaf, who used to, in terms of the statures of the slaves, Sayyidina Bilal was one of the ones that were your highest ranked. So he's somebody that could have had a very comfortable life, even though it was in slavery, and he would tend to the affairs of Umayyah's, his plantations and his wealth and all of that. Although he would look after the household, he was somebody that had a higher stature amongst the slaves. And so he's somebody that could have, relatively speaking, had a comfortable life even within slavery. And in those early days when the Prophet ﷺ received the Risala, and word came to Sayyidina Bilal that Muhammad ﷺ is professing this message of monotheism, that there is one God, and it is something that frees the human soul. And that sense of freedom is what Sayyidina Bilal inclined towards, and he immediately latched on to the message of Islam. And then when Umayyah came to find out about this, and if you've seen the movie also, this is where the torture of Bilal radiallahu anhu would start, where he used to chain him up. They used to throw water and spit on him, and again call him this derogatory term, Ibn Sauda. And they used to take idols of Lat and Uzza and put it in front of Sayyidina Bilal, and tell him to renounce his religion. And then there came a time where he actually put a dog collar on Sayyidina Bilal and dragged him through the streets of Mecca, right? And they did this for a reason. They wanted the other slaves to see that if you're going to follow the footsteps of Bilal, then this is what's going to happen to you as well. On one occasion, Waraka bin Nawfal, the cousin of Sayyidah Khadija, saw Bilal, and Bilal was saying, Ahadun Ahad, Ahadun Ahad. And Waraka said, Ahadun Ahad, Wallahi ya Bilal. and he said, he confirmed what Bilal was saying, almost to give that sense of support, even though Bilal was still in slavery. And he said, what you people are doing with him, that if he dies, I would build a shrine for this man, right? He was considered, the slaves in the time of the Quraysh were considered the lowest of the low. They were on the bottom of the socioeconomic totem pole. And um, and Abdullah bin Masud, he said that the Prophet ﷺ, he used to give people an out, that whoever was being tortured or tormented, and if they were told to accept one thing so that they wouldn't be punished anymore, and most people would take that ruksa, right? They would take that, and and the Prophet ﷺ said he was okay with it, because as long as you were saying it on your tongue but you didn't believe it in your heart, he was fine with it. He said, except Bilal, illa Bilal, that Bilal was the only one, both in his tongue and physically, he endured everything that he had to for the name of Islam and for that ahadun ahad. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, later on, he would ask Bilal, Bilal, why would you always say ahadun ahad, ahadun ahad? He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, O leader of the believers, had I known anything else, I would have said that about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Had I known Jabbar, had I known Kareem, had I known Rahman, had I known Rahim, I would have said that. But all I knew was ahad, and that's all I would say. And I knew that this was something that would also, get under the skin of Umayyah. And so finally, where does this culminates to the point where the torture got so bad that Umayyah hires about 6 or 7 men to bring a huge rock. So the depiction in the movie is actually pretty accurate. Bring a huge rock on to Bilal. And when they saw that that didn't kill him, that brought him a lot of pain, they started putting more rocks on top of it. And at the time, the word reaches the Prophet ﷺ, and he immediately summons Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq to go and free Sayyidina Bilal. So Abu Bakr Siddiq goes and starts negotiating with Umayyah bin Khalaf, and he says, what do you want for him? And he says, give me 7 to 10 dinars. Then Sayyidina Abu Bakr goes back and brings back 10 dinars. And Umayyah bin Khalaf starts to laugh. While Bilal is quite literally on his deathbed on the ground, right, with this huge rock under him, he starts to laugh. He says, he tries to debase him even more. He says, had you given me just 1 dinar, I would have let him go. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he's not about to let his brother in Islam be ridiculed this way. And so he says, O Umayyah, Wallahi, had you asked me for 100 dinars, I would have brought you 100 dinars to free Bilal. And so he frees Bilal, Sayyidina Bilal, and Sayyidina Bilal goes with Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And they used to say that Abu Bakr is our master and he freed our master. Haza Sayyiduna wa ataka Sayyiduna. That Abu Bakr is our master and he freed our master, meaning Sayyidina Bilal. There was a time, the Prophet ﷺ, he used to often implore the leaders of the Quraysh to listen, sit down and listen to the message of Islam. And finally, Abu Talib was able to get some of the leaders of the Quraysh to say, okay, we'll sit down and listen, but these 4 slaves can't be with you. And he mentioned Suhaib and Bilal and so on. And this word now reached the Prophet ﷺ. Revelation came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that do not turn away those that are callers to Allah. And when this happened, the Quraysh were saying, yes, we're willing to sit down with you and have this meeting and listen to your word. And when this happened, the Prophet ﷺ, he obliged and he listened to the revelation. And on behalf of these slaves that were now being lifted, right? They were people that were seen as, the Quraysh, the nobles, they didn't want to be seen with these people. They said, we're willing to sit with you, but not while these, these low-class slaves and these dark-skinned people are with you. We're not willing to do that. So have them outside. And, this is an opportunity for the Prophet ﷺ to give them the message of Islam. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through revelation to the Prophet ﷺ, says, absolutely not. This is not, this is a, this is a showstopper. This is something that we don't compromise on. And the Prophet ﷺ, he canceled that meeting and never had that meeting. When they were on their way to Medina, they're on their way to Medina, Abu Dhar al-Ghifari. Abu Dhar is one of the great Sahabi that has been written about, and one of the great companions. But early on, he was not somebody that was seen around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet sallam didn't necessarily have the chance to fashion and mold his characteristics, and so his behavior. And so as they're traveling to Medina, there's a debate that breaks out, and Abu Dhar says to Bilal, "Ya ibn Sauda," right? It's that word, that derogatory word, "Oh, son of a black woman," and it's clear what he's trying to say here. And this really hurt Sayyidina Bilal, because you could imagine this was something that he hadn't heard since the time when he was a slave, right? And since the time that he used to be tortured. And so this was like a trigger point for him. And when he hears this, it brought back all of those memories, and he was really hurt by this. And soon word reached the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ, the narration says that he was actually approaching Abu Dhar, and as he's going to him, he says, "Did you say something to him? Did you say something to him about his mother?" Right? And he's extremely upset. And he says to Abu Dhar, he said that, "Oh Abu Dhar, you have the traces of Jahiliyyah in you. You have the traces of Jahiliyyah in you." And when Abu Dhar listens to this, right, what does he do? Abu Dhar now he understands, and now he acknowledges that he has done something that is, gravely wrong, and it has upset the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he goes and he puts his face on the dirt. Now you imagine, right? This is an Arab that is doing this in front of a former slave. And so he goes and he puts his face on the dirt, and he says to Bilal to step on his face and take that bit of arrogance out of him. And what does Sayyidina Bilal do? He picks up Abu Dhar, and he said there's no need for that, and he kisses him on his cheek. And they are brothers in Islam. When they get to Medina, they were extremely homesick. As a matter of fact, Bilal radiallahu anhu, he used to write poetry about how homesick he was about Mecca, and Abu Bakr would also do the same thing. And Hazrat Aisha, she informed the Prophet ﷺ about this, and so the Prophet ﷺ, he made dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless Medina and its waters and its surroundings, and make it a peaceful place for them to live. Soon after, Abdullah ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, he has a dream that he sees a man with two green garments come to him with a clapper. And he says that we need a way to bring the people together for prayer. He says, and I'll buy that clapper from you. And the man says, I have something better for you in his dream. And he teaches him the words of the adhan. And interestingly, as Abdullah ibn Zayd is going to him, Umar ibn Khattab anhu, he also had the same dream. And he's going to the Prophet ﷺ with this. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, teach this to Bilal. He has the best voice. He is the most qualified. He is always with me. Teach this to Bilal. And that's when the appointing of Sayyidina Bilal anhu as the mu'adhin of the Prophet ﷺ happened. And Bilal, he used to start his day every day, As-salatu ya Rasulullah, As-salatu ya Rasulullah. He used to go to the Prophet ﷺ. He used to get him to come do the prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ, he used to say, Rihna biha ya Bilal. Oh Bilal, bring us peace and serenity with it. Bring us peace and serenity with it, with the prayer, with the call to prayer. And so now in Medina, Bilal radiallahu anhu, he goes and he ascends and he's making the adhan. Imagine how, where he was in Mecca, under the rocks, right? Almost at the end of his life when Umayyah bin Khalaf was trying to kill him. And now he's been, liberated by Islam, taken from, as a slave of creation to now the slave of the creator. And he has been elevated in within the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he makes the adhan in Medina. Sayyidina Bilal was also somebody that was always with the Prophet ﷺ. As a matter of fact, in many of those moments when the Prophet ﷺ would be by himself, Bilal would be with him. So much so that even Umar, when somebody would have to come to see him, they would seek permission, even Umar radiallahu anhu, from Bilal radiallahu anhu. Now imagine Umar, the prior to Islam in his days of Jahiliyyah, the strong, the proud and arrogant member of the Quraysh that Umar was, and now he's having to seek permission from Sayyidina Bilal. This is where the status of Sayyidina Bilal was raised. Sayyidina Bilal was also in charge of the treasury, Baytul Mal, and he used to also safeguard the belongings of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So look at the, not just the mu'adhin of the Nabi Alayhi Wasallam, but also the safeguard of Baytul Mal, the treasury of the Muslim Ummah, as well as the personal belongings of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Sayyidina Umar, he actually loved Bilal so much that he named his first son Bilal. He named his first son Bilal, and he was praised that, there is no Bilal better than the son of Umar. And Umar used to say, no, there is no Bilal that is better than the Bilal of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The station and the maqam of Sayyidina Bilal once again. There was a scene where it's in the narration of the Prophet ﷺ, when Bilal was making the adhan, and there were people that were listening, and they were so mesmerized by his beautiful voice that he used to project. And as he's making the adhan and as he finishes, he turns to the people and he says, if you say what he has said with yaqeen, if you say what you will enter Jannah. And this is a narration of the Prophet ﷺ. We now go to the Battle of Badr. As we know, the Muslims were outnumbered, and at the end of the battle, Umayyah was still alive. Umayyah bin Khalaf, the former master of Sayyidina Bilal, and Abdul Rahman ibn Auf was, in the days of Jahiliyyah, he was a friend of Umayyah bin Khalaf. And so Umayyah sees that the battle's ending, and he's kind of talking in terms of, okay, in terms of whoever needs to go into captivity, and let's do the logistics of this. Sayyidina Bilal sees Umayyah, and Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, he actually tried to stop him, but Hazrat Bilal basically says that if he lives, I cannot live. If he lives, I cannot live. And he goes, and Umayyah on that day of the Battle of Badr saw his demise at the hands of Sayyidina Bilal. Now, you would think that the racism at this point, is over. And now we see it from within the Muslim community, even amongst the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So I mentioned that one episode with Abu Dhar, but now Sayyidina Bilal, looking to get married, the Prophet ﷺ, he went to one of the tribes in Medina, and he asked for Sayyidina Bilal to be married to someone, and they turned him away. This is the Prophet ﷺ bringing the hand of marriage for Sayyidina Bilal, his muadhin, right? And these people, they said, we would like to think about it. And 3 days went by, and they said that we would like to think about it. And the Prophet ﷺ, he started to get very angry at this, and he said, what is it with you people? This is a man from amongst the people of Jannah, a man from amongst the people of Jannah, and you don't want to marry him to your daughter. Where is your mind at? And eventually, they refused the proposal. So you could see that some of that racism was still there, because Sayyidina Bilal was more than qualified. He was overqualified. The only reason he was turned down in that marriage proposal was simply because of his skin color. And so eventually he married the sister of Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, Hala bint Auf, and she became his wife. The next episode that we go to is Fath Makkah. The ulama, they say that, the Battle of Badr, that was the day of Hamza. The Battle of Badr was the day of Hamza. The Battle of Uhud was the day of Talha. And the Khandaq, the Battle of Khandaq, was the day of Salman, as we know, Salman al-Farsi, who came up with he devised the plan of the trench, and so they say that was Yom Salman, the day of Salman, and the day of the Fath of Mecca was the day of Bilal. Now you imagine this scene where Bilal has been making the adhan. He has been serving the Prophet ﷺ. He's by his side every moment. And now they come back to Mecca. This is the place where where he was a slave, where he was tortured. The people know Bilal as one thing. They know him as just as the slave of Umayyah, who was eventually freed by Abu Bakr. But that's all they know him as. And Fath Mecca has interesting dynamics where the people that were sitting on the sidelines, they were not necessarily um, opposed to Islam, but they had their tribal affiliations, and those that affiliation was still strong to their ways of their forefathers, and they were kind of seeing how their religion versus this religion that Muhammad ﷺ has brought, how this whole battle would play out. And the Fath of Mecca was, the conquest of Mecca was clear that that Islam had the upper hand at this point, and the message had now, completely been spread in a way where the people started coming into Islam in droves, and that's what Fath Mecca was. And what happens on that day? The Prophet ﷺ, he takes Bilal to the Kaaba, and Bilal was the first person to go with the Prophet ﷺ inside the Kaaba, and he tells Bilal to ascend the Kaaba, go on top of the Kaaba and make the adhan. Now you imagine, right? This is a man that used to be under a boulder, a rock in Mecca, who is going to be killed by these people. And these same people are now witnessing the Fath of Mecca. The same people that are witnessing Bilal being tortured are now witnessing Bilal being risen, right? Where he was beneath a rock and now he is above the Kaaba. And he's being he ascends the Kaaba and starts to make the adhan, and the racist comments start to come out because these people, they've just entered Islam. They haven't been trained. They haven't received the tarbiyah from the Prophet ﷺ as of yet. And so Abu Sufyan and other members who had just entered Islam, although Abu Sufyan did not say anything that day, he said that I don't want it to testify against me on the day of judgment. Others start to make the comment that thank God that my father is not alive on this day when a black man has ascended the Kaaba. And this is, the Prophet, he heard about this, and this is when the verses from Surah Al-Hujurat were revealed that, O people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you into tribes, and so that you may know one another, and that the best from amongst you is the one that who is most God conscious. So that verse from Surah Al-Hujurat was revealed at this time, and it was made abundantly clear that this Bilal, right, where he was in society and what Islam does, it makes people equal as brothers and sisters, and it raises you based on your taqwa, right? That is the litmus test. That is the gauge of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges people. It is not by the skin tones, but it is by your level of iman and taqwa, and that is only up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Small incident that had happened when they saw when Bilal, Ammar, and Suhaib, they saw Abu Sufyan, and they said to him that some of you were spared on the Fath of Mecca. And Abu Bakr Siddiq, he heard this, and he was concerned. He didn't want any tensions. These people had just entered into Islam. And he said, why did you guys have to go and say that? And he goes and he tells the Prophet ﷺ. Now, this is Sayyidina Abu Bakr. We already did a session on him and what he means to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ never admonishes Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and the Prophet ﷺ, he tells him that what you said, if that angered those three, meaning the slaves that said that, the former slaves, Bilal and Suhaib, if that angered them, then it has earned the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so then Abu Bakr Siddiq goes and he makes it right with them. Well, at the time that the Prophet ﷺ was dying. You know, you can imagine from the time that he was freed by Abu Bakr, he was always, Sayyidina Bilal was always with the Prophet ﷺ. He would start his day by, calling the Prophet ﷺ to the prayer, As-salatu ya Rasulullah, As-salatu ya Rasulullah. And he said that I always wanted to die before the Prophet ﷺ. I would never wanted to live to see a day where the Prophet ﷺ would pass in front of my eyes. And so Bilal was one of those that was so stricken with sorrow. And after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, he tried to make the adhan, and he would get to Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and he would start to choke up right there. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, he would start to choke up. And so finally, he asked Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq that, please free me. I can't be in Medina anymore. I can't be where my beloved was. Free me from here. And Abu Bakr Siddiq said, no, I need you here, Bilal, with me. And Bilal said, if you freed me for yourself, then I will come and stay with you. But if you freed me for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then please let me go. And then Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq lets him go. Bilal settled in the greater Sham area, in the area of Syria. Later, during the Khilafah of Sayyidina Umar, when Jerusalem was freed by the Muslims, and Sayyidina Bilal was part of that conquest. This is the first time that the Sahabi were seeing him after so many years. They said, "Oh Bilal, bring back the adhan, the day, so that we can remember the Prophet ﷺ, make the adhan." And so Sayyidina Bilal makes the adhan. So now Sayyidina Bilal, this is his station. He was the first in Islam to make the adhan in Medina, and the first in Islam, period. He was the first to make the adhan in Mecca, when the Prophet ﷺ, during the Fath of Mecca, told him to ascend the Kaaba and make the adhan. And now he is the first to make the adhan in Al-Quds, in Jerusalem. And so in all three holy sites, Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu made the adhan. And again, when he came to Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, he started to choke up. And then there was one other incident when Sayyidina Bilal later in his life would go to Medina, and he saw Hassan and Hussein, and he used to honor them because they were so close to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ loved his grandchildren so much. And on their request, he was asked to make the adhan. He made the adhan, and people that were transacting stopped. Mothers that were cooking and taking care of their children stopped, because everybody in Medina that heard that adhan remembered it from the days of the Prophet ﷺ, and they started thinking, has the Prophet come back? And everybody started to come out and listen to the adhan. And this was the legacy of Sayyidina Bilal. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith, "O Bilal, I have seen and heard your slippers, the sounds of your slippers in Jannah. Tell me, what is one sincere act that you've done to earn such a reward?" And and Sayyidina Bilal has done so much. Obviously, he he was under the rock saying Ahadun Ahad for his life, and he's done so many things. The adhan, and being the confidant of the Prophet ﷺ and his right hand person. What was that one sincere thing that you've done? And Sayyidina Bilal says, very simply, after I make wudu, I pray 2 rakats to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so although he's not listed amongst the Ashara Mubashirun, the 10 promised Jannah, and we know those are not the only 10, that Sayyidina Bilal is somebody that is from Jannah. We also know from the another narration of the Prophet ﷺ that Sayyidina Bilal will be the one carrying the standard, and he will be leading the muadhin on all the people that make the adhan on the day of judgment. And the people that make the adhan in this dunya, they will be recognized on the day of judgment with their long necks. It's another narration of the Prophet ﷺ. When Sayyidina Bilal was passing away, he was on his deathbed. It was during the plague, during the Khilafah of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. His wife, obviously, they didn't have any children, and so he was all she had. And she said that this is such a day of tragedy and sorrow. And Sayyidina Bilal said that, no, don't say that. This is actually a day of happiness, because after today, I get to once again witness the companionship of my Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. and Sayyidina Abu Bakr, who had also passed away at that time, I get to be with my companions. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow us to honor Sayyidina Bilal. And this is this is the textbook example of how Islam came and it eradicated racism and it made all of us brothers and sisters that are equal amongst one another, and that the only thing that makes one better than the other in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taqwa. And Sayyidina Bilal, because he died during a plague, inshallah, he also has the status of a shaheed. As the Prophet said, anybody that dies during a plague is from amongst the shuhada. So amongst so many of the other amazing attributes and accomplishments of Sayyidina Bilal, he's also from amongst the shuhada. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us their companionship and the Prophet's companionship in Al-Firdaus Al-Ala on the Day of Judgment and in the Akhirah. Barakallahu li wa lakum wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.